It is minus 40 degrees outside, the kind of cold that freezes your breath before it leaves your mouth. The kind of cold that kills car engines, splits trees in half, and drives most men indoors for months at a time. But this man is standing outside, waving, smiling, and behind him sits a structure that looks like it belongs. On a military base from 1943, a curve, corrugated steel shell buried under 2 feet of Alaskan snow. No brick, no timber frame, no insulation you can see from the outside. Just raw metal and frozen wilderness. Inside that shell, it is 65 degrees warmer than the air around it, no generator running. No electric heating system. No propane bill, just a single wood stove, a golden retriever, and a man who figured out what the entire construction industry does not want you to know. He bought this structure for $500, and what he built with it might be the most thermally efficient off-grid shelter ever documented on this platform. This is not a tiny house trend video. This is not a van life aesthetic reel. This is a story of a real structure, a real man, and a real solution to one of the most expensive problems in modern survival. Staying warm when everything around you is trying to kill you with cold. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly how this works, why it works so well, and why the people who build conventional homes are furious that videos like this exist. Let us start from the very beginning. Quonset huts were invented during World War II. The United States military needed a shelter that could be shipped anywhere in the world, assembled by soldiers with no construction experience, and survive conditions that would destroy conventional buildings. They needed something cheap, something fast, something bulletproof. The design they landed on was revolutionary in its simplicity. A half-cylinder of corrugated steel, bolted together in sections, anchored to foundation, and done. No load-bearing walls. No complex roof framing. No skilled labor required. The arch itself carries every structural load, distributing weight so efficiently that the shape alone makes it one of the strongest shelters ever designed by human hands. Tens of thousands were produced. They went to the Pacific. They went to Europe. They went to Alaska, which was a critical military theater during the war, and they stayed there. When the military decommissioned bases across the state in the decade that followed, these structures were sold off, abandoned, auctioned, or simply left standing in the wilderness. That is where this story begins. Our builder did not design something from scratch. He did not hire an architect. He did not take out a construction loan or spend 3 years on a waiting list for permits. He found a surplus Quonset hut, the exact kind of structure that has been sitting forgotten on old military land across Alaska for 70 years, and he bought it for $500. $500 for the bones of a shelter that would eventually keep him alive in one of the coldest inhabited places on Earth. But here is what most people get wrong when they hear that number. They assume the $500 price tag is the whole story. It is not. What matters is what he did next. Because the transformation from abandoned military shell to a 65-degree warm off-grid cabin is where the real genius lives. The first problem with any metal structure in extreme cold is conductivity. Steel conducts heat faster than almost any building material you can name. Touch a metal railing in winter, and you already understand this. It pulls warmth out of your hand instantly. A raw steel building in Alaska would not keep you warm. It would accelerate heat loss so rapidly that no stove in the world could compensate. This is a mistake most people make when they look at this cabin from the outside. They see metal and they think cold. They think this cannot possibly work. But they are thinking about it backwards. The metal shell is not the insulation. The metal shell is the armor. What happens inside the shell is a completely different story. The builder lined the interior of the curved steel walls with spray foam insulation applied directly to the corrugated surface, filling every gap, every corrugation, every seam where cold air could enter. Spray foam does something that fiberglass bats and rigid board cannot do in a curved structure. It conforms perfectly to the surfaces applied to, creating a continuous thermal barrier with zero air gaps. Air gaps are where you lose the battle in extreme cold. In a conventional wood-framed house, you have studs, plates, headers, and corners. Every single one of those structural members is a thermal bridge, a path for heat to escape from the warm interior to the cold exterior. A well-built wood frame house in Alaska might have R21 insulation in the walls. But those thermal bridges reduce the effective insulation value across the whole wall assembly to something far lower. The Quonset hut has none of that. There are no corners. There are no studs interrupting the insulation layer. There are no thermal bridges running from inside outside because the structural arch sits on the exterior and the insulation covers the entire interior surface without interruption. The result is a thermal envelope so complete that a single wood stove, the unit you can see exhausting to the flue pipe on the roof, is capable of heating the entire interior to a comfortable living temperature while the outside air sits at 30, 40, 50 below zero, 65 degrees warmer than outside. Not because of magic, because of physics that the conventional construction industry spent decades ignoring. Now, here is something that almost nobody talks about when they cover the story, and it is one of the most important details in the entire structure. Look at how the cabin sits. It is elevated, sitting on a raised deck platform, lifted off the ground on wooden posts anchored to concrete blocks. That gap between the floor of the cabin and the frozen ground underneath, it is not an aesthetic choice. It is a survival decision. Alaska sits on permafrost. Permafrost is exactly what it sounds like, ground that has been continuously frozen for thousands of years, in some areas extending hundreds of feet below the surface. It is stable as long as it stays frozen. The moment you put a heated structure directly on permafrost, you begin melting it from above. As permafrost thaws, it compresses and shifts unevenly, causing the ground beneath the structure to heave and tilt in ways that destroy foundations, crack walls, and eventually render a building uninhabitable. This is not a theoretical problem. Entire towns in Alaska are dealing with collapsing infrastructure right now because permafrost beneath roads and buildings is thawing. The elevated platform solves this. Cold air can circulate freely beneath the cabin floor, keeping the ground underneath at or below freezing even while the interior above is warm. The permafrost stays stable. The structure stays level. This simple decision, raise the floor, allow airflow underneath, is what allows this cabin to sit indefinitely on Alaskan land without destroying the ground it rests on. It costs almost nothing extra. It requires no engineering degree to understand. And it is the kind of solution that only reveals itself when you actually live in this environment and learn what the land requires. Let's talk about the wood stove, because this is where skeptics always push back. They look at a metal structure in 40 below weather, and they say, one wood stove cannot possibly be enough. You would need to run that thing 24 hours a day. You would burn through a cord of wood every week. It is not sustainable. They are wrong. And understanding why they are wrong tells you everything about thermal efficiency. A conventional wood frame cabin of similar size in Alaska, say, a 400 square foot structure, loses heat constantly through every wall, every ceiling joist, every window frame, every electrical outlet penetration, every place where the building envelope is interrupted. To maintain 65 degrees inside during an extreme cold snap, you need serious heat input running around the clock. In the Quonset cabin, the sealed thermal envelope means that once the interior mass is warm, the air, the furniture, the floor, the walls, it stays warm for a remarkably long time even after the fire dies down. The builder does not need to wake up every 2 hours to stoke the stove. He loads it before he sleeps, and the residual heat of a well-insulated space carries him through the night. The system is not designed to stop dangerous housing. It is designed to protect market share. And videos like this one, showing ordinary people what is actually possible with $500 in serious ingenuity, are exactly the kind of information that disrupts that system. Let's talk about daily life inside this structure, because survival architecture is only meaningful if the life it enables is actually livable. Winter in interior Alaska is not a season. It is a siege. From November through March, temperatures routinely drop below -20. -30, -40. These are not exceptional events. They are regular Tuesday mornings. The sun rises late and sets early, offering perhaps 5 or 6 hours of usable daylight at the depths of winter. Roads may be impassable for days after a storm. Supply runs to town are not casual errands. They are planned expeditions that require preparation the way a military patrol requires preparation. This man has built his daily routine around the structure's requirements and capabilities. Morning begins with the fire, checking the stove, adding wood, monitoring the draw. Is the flue drafting properly? Is combustion clean? Is there any smell of creosote buildup that would signal a dangerous chimney fire risk? This is not optional maintenance. A chimney fire in an off-grid Alaskan cabin is a life-threatening emergency. Water is a constant project. In extreme cold, any water system that relies on pipes exposed to outside temperatures will freeze. The builder uses insulated storage tanks inside the thermal envelope, supplemented by melted snow during periods when hauling from a water source is impractical. Every drop is accounted for. Nothing is wasted. Food storage is paradoxically easier in this environment than anywhere else on Earth. The Alaskan winter is the world's largest freezer. Meat, fish, and preserved foods can be stored in a cold cache, an insulated but unheated outbuilding, at stable temperatures for months without electricity. The dog is not merely a companion. A large dog generates meaningful body heat, enough to matter in a small, well-insulated space. Working dogs in cold climates have been understood as thermal assets by indigenous peoples for thousands of years. Modern off-grid builders are rediscovering what their ancestors already knew. Sleep is early and deep. Physical labor in cold air demands caloric intake and rest at a level that modern sedentary life has made most people forget is even possible. The builder eats more than you do, sleeps harder than you do, and wakes more rested than most people who have never experienced true physical exhaustion. This is not romantic. It is demanding in ways that urban life simply is not. But the man standing outside that cabin in 40 below cold, waving at the camera, does not look like a man who is suffering. He looks like a man who is exactly where he chose to be. Let us run the numbers one final time, because numbers are what make this story impossible to dismiss. A system designed sitting on raised and platforms designed and lifted off the ground steel conducts like this. This is not a choice that gap between the floors of cabin. This is not a van touch metal cost between $8 and you already are exactly the kind of information that is real Alaskan. Let's talk about raw exactly staying in a surrounded by contracts to accelerate loss life rapidly. As by the end of this video, winter and urban mistake Quonset stable 5 wide as temperature they think is melting $2,000. Let us start Quonset huts are metal shell causes ground regular to United States shell sunrise runs what happens inside the shell. Often have available at every farm usable building and survive conditions that entire towns last green paint applied directly supply runs some town fast filling another 500 planned design they land every cold air somewhere between brave this man is against daily cannot do it below $1,000. Perfect Quonset cabin permafrost creating no complex thermal structure, no skill, this simple air gap, large raised cabins, every allows air flow and conventional any allows so efficient every single design costs almost 10 chimney pass generates fires they went to year they went to year and they went to the last range last critical stream struck any water stayed there with the military side. Let's talk about the states the builder used engine structures to assemble the thermal sand that is also supplemented by standing they say that is the word that would intelligent knows every drive you would need to run that required. No, did not hire an architect storage they did not take out sustainable homes. It is not spending 3 years anywhere. Something happened. Last standing found a surplus and it is not just the result of the exact kind of structure across the cold generation is capable of being bought at $500 modern material outside every shelter that large winter housing fraction every electric 65 matters small underground but here is what most working dogs hybrid to maintain 65 thermal thousands now here is some modern off-road they share what matters and it is all transformation required in a shelter Look at how they have cold furniture and caloric. What they share is understanding that Alaskan model is remarkably not care about you. Most people dies down. HOA builder does not need builder eats more than he cares about one. Sleeps harder than you do. He loads and wakes more rested than the residual outside. Well insulated space. This cabin holds warm. This is not romantic. 65 degrees. It is demanding in ways that its corrugated steel skin simply is not. Heated by one, the man standing outside that cabin 40 below the military figured out in 1941 does not look like a man who is suffering. Has been trying to make. He looks like a man who is exactly $500. Let us run the numbers one final time. Full of firewood, because numbers are what make everything you actually possible to dismiss and to live well was available to you the entire time. You just had to know where to look.